Hello viewers, I just finished binge watching this marvelous psychological masterpiece, Baby Reindeer. It is a limited TV series on Netflix and it was recently aired and it is based on a true story, and the main character is the person whose story it is. So some of you have asked me to do a psychological interpretation of this show because a lot of you have confusion and questions about certain actions the main character displayed. So I'm going to divide today's video in 3 separate sections. In first section, I'll talk about Donnie's relationship with his abuser and mentor, Darian. Then I will talk about his relationship with his stalker, Martha. And in the end, I will briefly talk about his relationship with his love interest, the transsexual female. We'll start with his relationship with his abuser and mentor, Darian. I find his relationship with his abuser very dark and unsettling, and actually it set the tone for the entire show. All his psychological issues, all his insecurities, and all the problems he encountered later in life. So he's a young guy in college. He wanted to make it big in comedy. He was really obsessed with his comedy show, but it was not going anywhere. And then one day Darian came in and told him he's great and he can make it big, and gave him a lot of validation and encouragement. And he was from social media. I think he was really big in social media at that time, and he presented very confident too, and he actually improved his show quite a bit and he became very successful. And then they started spending a lot of time together, and then he did end up Darian, who was his manipulator, slowly groomed him, not only emotionally abused him, he also sexually and physically abused him. It was like one of the darkest, very, very difficult to watch, the sexual abuse part of it. And a lot of you have questions why he didn't leave the first time when it happened. So what his mentor was doing is he was giving him some pretty strong drugs. They were euphoric and they were also dissociative drugs like MDMA, which is ecstasy. Also, he was giving him GHB, which is very common date rape drug. And then he gave him acid and multiple others like crack and heroin. All of these drugs can cause dissociation in reality and perception. So why he didn't leave the first time is because when we experience a sudden significant emotional trauma, what happened is that our psyche and our mind go into a frozen state. It's also called psychological shock, when we just get paralyzed and we are unable to make a decision or take an action. Also, the first time when it happened, I felt that it was not that much of a shock. It was more of a denial, and he was kind of like in denial and kind of also wanting to normalize the situation and escaping, dissociating from what happened, because he really wanted to become big, and he put Darian on a pedestal and he thought that he will make his dreams come true. So in the beginning, a lot of people at such young age are defining their self-identity. So he didn't have a very well-formed sense of self. He was confused about his identity at that time. He didn't seem to have a very good or confident, healthy self-esteem because he was not going anywhere in life. He was trying to make it big, and when his mentor gave him so much validation, he started really looking up to him and he put him on a pedestal. So when this happened, the first incident of sexual assault, when it happened, seems like he just dissociated and put it aside and kept focusing on his goal because he wanted to become big. That's why he didn't leave. And then there's also sometimes the victims think that these kind of situations will get better if they just dissociate, or if they try to normalize it, or if they go in denial. They unconsciously hope that things will get better on their own because they want the other things so bad. So they are just unconsciously thinking that it will get better. But when abuse starts, it ends up getting much worse than getting better. So the worst and most unsettling, darkest scene in the entire series is the one when the major sexual assault or trauma happens. It's very difficult to watch. And why even after that, he stayed with him for 4 days and acted like nothing happened. Like they never had a conversation about what is going on. He never confronted him. And this is very typical of victims not to do that. And perpetrators or abusers try to normalize their behavior also and don't talk about it. So why he stayed there for 4 more days? At that time, he was in a psychological shock and frozen state. And when someone is in a psychological shock or frozen state, they are unable to make decision or unable to take actions. It usually happens after a very severe trauma when our mind just shuts down and is unable to like process or unfold the events that has happened. And this is a defense mechanism that our mind uses just to protect itself. And then slowly the person starts to unpack what reality is. And even then, a lot of time people just push it, suppress it underneath, and like just store it inside them instead of facing it, because it is usually very painful to face what actually has happened. And we have a tendency to run away from pain and not feel pain. But suppressing it and not feeling the pain and not confronting what happened comes with a very big price until we deal with it. And this happened with him. Like afterwards, he became very sexually reckless. He became very confused about his sexuality. He slept with guys, he slept with girls, he slept with transsexual women. And he also mentioned that he put himself in situations that were very reckless, even dangerous, where he was actually very subjected and very vulnerable to get raped again. And why did he do that? It's a phenomenon. It's called repetition compulsion. Actually, father of psychiatry, Sigmund Freud, noticed that in his clients that they were repeating the same pattern in their relationships, in their behavior, even though they knew it's not good for them, but they were unable to stop it. So that's what happened with him too, with Donnie, that he kept using the same pattern, same behavior, putting himself in risky situations. And it is a form of repetition cycle, repetition compulsion. And now a lot of psychologists believe is that people do it, people put them in the same situations because they are familiar, they are more comforting. So the last question about his relationship with Darian is, why did he go back to his abuser in the end? And not only go back, even said yes to work with him again. So this is again a complex one. What happens is that usually the victim tries to gain control afterwards with the abuser. Whenever there's emotional, sexual, or physical abuse, power and control plays a big role in the entire dynamic. So the abuser has a lot of power and control over the victim. And that's what we saw in this series too, that Darian has so much power and control over Donnie, and Donnie was so vulnerable. So he went back in an attempt to gain power and control. And some people say that it was kind of Stockholm behavior. I did not see Stockholm behavior that much. In Stockholm behavior, the person usually develop feelings for their abuser and end up like kind of in love with the abuser. I didn't see a lot of it. Maybe a little bit may have happened, but it didn't play a big role. He went back definitely to gain power and control over his abuser. Maybe he was thinking to confront him, but definitely he could not confront him. They did not talk about the abuse, and he ended up kind of feeling very helpless and said yes when he asked him to work for him again. And it really bothered him too afterwards. So what happens? He went back to the abuser because he was trying to recreate the whole thing, but at this time, instead of abuser having power and control, he wanted to have the power and control because he chose to go to the abuser. And in that way, he was trying to gain closure for this whole thing. Before I start, let's watch a short clip from the series.
41,071 emails, 350 hours of voicemail, 744 tweets, 46 Facebook messages, 4 fake Facebook accounts, 106 pages of letters, and 1 cup of tea.
Now let's come to the most interesting character, and it is of Martha's, his stalker. this is the character of Martha, his stalker, and she did such an excellent job. And actually this story is going completely insane. There's so many new things happening, and I'm going to make a reaction video of the real person who Martha played in my next video. So let's talk about Martha. So she came in, and one day she looked really down and sad, and she came to his bar. He was a bartender, and he offered her a tea, and she didn't have money, so he said it's on the house. Then it all started. She completely changed. She became so happy and giggly, and just she loved the attention. She literally thought that him giving her a free cup of tea is him flirting with her, and he was just doing it because he felt bad for her at that time. But then she started coming there every day and stayed at the bar throughout his shift. There are a lot of incidences when he could have called the police, and he should have called the police, and he could have done a better job setting boundaries, and he didn't. It seemed like he actually liked the attention, and he enabled her behavior, and he actually accepted it in the show. So what happened is that when she started giving him that kind of attention, his need for appreciation and validation was getting met, and someone was putting him on a pedestal at this time. He always wanted to be on that pedestal. He wanted to be there for someone else, like how he put his mentor to the pedestal. But this time he's on a pedestal, and he's put on that pedestal by his stalker. So he enjoyed all those things, and because of him enjoying all these things, he was kind of loose with boundary setting. He could have gone to the police and reported it, and one of the scenes, I just don't understand when she actually physically assaulted his transsexual girlfriend, why she didn't file charges. It's like battery. It's a felony to assault someone. It was a pretty significant assault. Why she let it go? That is very unclear, because she seemed like a very reasonable, logical person. Anyway, so for that reason, he didn't report her, and he enjoyed it. And even after it went completely out of hand, he did report her, and it became very difficult because she was twisted and she was manipulative, and she would flip, and then she would tell the police that he is stalking her. But when she stopped sending her messages, he seemed to miss her. So was he actually missing her, or was he missing the attention? He even acknowledged that he was not missing her. He was not even attracted to her. He was just missing the constant attention she was giving him. Also saw her being very chaotic. She was a very chaotic person, and he liked it because his life was so chaotic. So he connected with her on the basis of that chaos, because when everything is chaotic, we don't have to deal with serious things that we have suppressed within us. It's a form of escape. So that's what was working between these two as well. And when he reported her to authorities and she stopped messaging him, he missed the attention and validation. Okay, I missed one point in his relationship with his abuser. A lot of time actually victims think that it is their fault, and they have played a role in being abused or getting abused, and they start to blame themselves. So let's come to his relationship with that transsexual female that he said that he was in love with, but he could not enjoy her love, and he pushed her away. So this is the girl who played the role of his transsexual female girlfriend. She was a therapist in the show, and she was very logical, reasonable, very loving, understanding, and gave him that wholesome love, which he enjoyed at first. He said that he was in love with her, but then he pushed her away. And why did he do that? The reason is that because of the sexual trauma that he has encountered, he had internalized shame and guilt. That is very typical of victims of traumas, that they start to feel ashamed of themselves. They start to feel guilt even though they didn't do anything wrong, but they blame themselves, they feel guilt, they feel shame. And shame is a very heavy emotion to internalize, and it takes a while to overcome. So he did not even process his shame. So when she started to show him the wholesome, healthy love, he could not handle it because the shame came up. Because of his shame, he didn't feel that he is worthy of this form of love. He's not worthy of it. And that's why he liked Martha's attention, because he thought he's worthy of that kind of love, but not worthy of this wholesome love. So please tell me if you have any other questions or any other points that you want me to elaborate on. And it is such an amazing show. If you haven't watched it, go watch it all. Thank you so much for watching, and I will come back with my reaction video on Piers Morgan interview with real Martha. Thank you. Bye.